Tonight, I want to tell you a quiet truth about love. Not the kind of love that shouts to be seen, but the kind that lives softly in the heart. The kind that stays even when no one notices. This is a story about a man who loved deeply, honestly, and completely. A man who never asked for applause, never demanded attention, and never tried to prove anything to the world. He simply loved in the purest way a heart can love. And the woman he loved, she never truly saw it. She didn't know about the silent prayers he whispered for her happiness. She didn't see the way his eyes softened every time she walked into the room. She didn't realize that the small, quiet things he did were pieces of his heart being given to her. Because real love, the kind that is patient and gentle, often moves quietly. It doesn't always stand in the spotlight. Sometimes it stands in the background, hoping, caring, protecting, without asking for anything in return. And that's the truth many people discover too late. Because sometimes the most real love in your life is the one that never tried to convince you it was there. She didn't know this, but his love was real. Love is not always loud. Sometimes it doesn't arrive with grand speeches or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it walks quietly beside someone day after day, carrying feelings too deep to explain. That was the kind of love he had for her. A love that lived in silence, a love that asked for nothing, a love that simply existed because his heart chose her long before his mind ever understood why. She never noticed the way his eyes softened when she walked into the room. To her, he was just someone familiar, someone kind, someone who was always around when life felt heavy. But to him, every moment near her felt like something sacred. The air felt warmer, the world slowed down, and for a brief moment, life felt exactly the way it was meant to feel. He never tried to compete for her attention. He never tried to be the loudest voice in her life. Instead, he chose something far more difficult. He chose patience, the quiet kind of patience that waits without pressure, hopes without demands, and loves without conditions. Sometimes he would watch her laugh with other people, and even though a small ache touched his heart, he would still smile, because seeing her happy mattered more to him than being the reason for that happiness. That is the strange thing about real love. It is not selfish. It does not demand ownership. It simply wishes for the other person to feel safe, to feel joy, to feel peace, even if that peace comes from someone else. He remembered the smallest details about her, the way she would tilt her head slightly when she was thinking, the way her voice softened when she spoke about something that truly mattered to her, the way she would pretend to be strong, even when life quietly weighed on her shoulders. These were the things she never realized someone noticed. To her, those moments were ordinary, just small pieces of everyday life that passed without meaning. But to him, those little pieces were treasures. They were proof that the person he loved was real, fragile, human, and beautifully imperfect. There were nights when he would lie awake thinking about her, not in a restless way, but in a gentle way, as if his heart had learned to whisper her name in the quiet spaces between thoughts. He would wonder if she was okay, if she had smiled that day, if something had hurt her, and she simply chose not to say it out loud. He cared about the things she never spoke about. Sometimes she would tell him small stories about her day, things she probably forgot a few hours later. But he listened like those words mattered more than anything else in the world. Because when you truly love someone, even their smallest sentences become meaningful. He didn't fall in love with a perfect version of her. He fell in love with the real one. The one who sometimes doubted herself. The one who sometimes pretended she didn't need anyone. The one who carried quiet worries behind her smile. He loved all of it. But he never told her how deeply his heart had chosen her. Not because he was afraid of honesty, but because real love understands timing. It understands that feelings cannot be forced into someone else's heart. So he waited. Days became months, and months slowly turned into years. Life moved forward the way it always does, quietly writing stories no one expects. She continued living her life, meeting people, chasing dreams, searching for the kind of love she believed she deserved. And he remained exactly where he had always been, not as a shadow, not as someone hoping for pity, but as someone who simply loved. Sometimes she would come to him when life felt confusing. She would talk about heartbreak, about disappointment, about people who promised forever but disappeared when things became difficult. He would listen without judgment. Inside, his heart would ache, not because she loved someone else, but because he knew she deserved a love that would never leave her feeling that way. And yet he never tried to turn her pain into an opportunity for himself. That's the difference between wanting someone and loving them. Wanting someone is about possession. Loving someone is about understanding. He understood that her heart had its own journey, its own lessons, its own timing. There were moments when she would look at him and say, "You're such a good person. Anyone would be lucky to have you." She meant those words as kindness, but she never realized that the man she was describing, Eng, had already given his heart to her a long time ago. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, the way the deepest feelings often arrive. He never kept a list of sacrifices. He never reminded her of the times he stood beside her when the world felt heavy. Because real love does not keep score. It simply shows up. When she was tired, he noticed. When she was pretending to be strong, he noticed. When she smiled in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes, he noticed. And sometimes he wished she could see him the way he saw her, not as someone convenient, not as someone familiar, but as someone whose heart had chosen her without hesitation. Still, he never tried to force that realization, because love that needs to be proven again and again often loses its purity. He believed that if she ever truly looked at him, really looked, she might see it. The quiet loyalty in his presence, the patience in his silence, the warmth in the way he spoke to her when the world had been unkind. But she never noticed. Life has a strange way of hiding the most sincere things behind the most ordinary moments. The person who loves you the deepest is often standing quietly beside you while you search for love somewhere else. He never hated her for not seeing it. How could he? Love that is real does not grow from resentment. It grows from understanding. And he understood that sometimes people don't recognize the love that surrounds them until time has already carried them somewhere else. Still, his heart remained the same, not bitter, not angry, just quietly devoted to someone who never realized how deeply she had been loved. Some evenings, they would sit together and talk about life. She would speak about the future, about the kind of relationship she hoped to find one day. She described someone who would be loyal, gentle, patient, someone who would never give up when life became complicated. And he would listen to her describe the very love he had been giving her all along. But he never interrupted. He never said, "I'm already here." Because real love does not beg to be recognized. It simply continues being what it has always been. There is a quiet strength in loving someone without demanding their heart in return. It takes courage to stay kind when your feelings remain unseen. It takes patience to care deeply without knowing if that care will ever be understood. He carried that courage every day, not loudly, not proudly, just silently, the way the strongest hearts often carry their burdens. Sometimes he imagined what life might feel like if she ever truly realized the depth of his love. He imagined the moment her eyes might soften with understanding, the moment she might finally see the truth that had been standing beside her for so long. But he never built his happiness around that possibility. Because love that is real does not depend on outcomes. It exists because the heart chooses to give, not because it expects to receive. And his heart had chosen her completely. There is a kind of love that does not seek to possess, a love that does not demand attention, recognition, or reward. It is both the most beautiful and the most painful form of love because it exists quietly, often in the shadows, and asks for nothing in return. Loving someone this way means opening your heart fully, letting them see the best of you, and still remaining prepared for the possibility that they may never notice the depth of your devotion. He loved her with every quiet fiber of his being. Every thought, every hope, every small act of kindness was directed toward her happiness alone. He never wanted to intrude, never wanted to overwhelm, never wanted to push her into noticing how much he cared. He simply gave because that was the nature of his heart. Because loving her was no longer about himself, it was about her and nothing else. Some days it hurt more than he could name. There were moments when he longed for even a single acknowledgement, a tiny gesture that would confirm she understood the extent of his feelings. But those moments passed, and he returned to the quiet devotion that had become second nature. Pain and love, he realized, often coexist. The deeper you love, the more vulnerable you become. And vulnerability, while terrifying, is also a kind of courage. Every time she smiled, he felt a lightness in his chest, even if she was smiling at someone else or at a moment he wasn't part of. Every time she shared a triumph or a small joy, he celebrated it in silence, because true love delights in the happiness of the beloved, regardless of personal gain. And yet there were times when the ache of unacknowledged love pressed heavily against his ribs. He learned that loving without expectation is both liberating and excruciating. It liberates because it frees the heart from the need to control or influence someone else's feelings. It excruciates because the heart continues to hope, to care, and to remain vulnerable even when there is no guarantee of reciprocity. Loving this way is a delicate balance between surrender and strength, between humility and profound courage. He discovered that the most real love is often invisible to the world. People might notice his kindness, his patience, his willingness to be present, but few could grasp the intensity of the quiet devotion that drove him. It was a love that did not boast or advertise, because the moment it seeks recognition, it loses some of its purity. She never realized that the small sacrifices he made were his way of showing love. The times he stayed late just to listen, the moments he offered comfort without being asked, the patience he held even when frustration would have been easier, these were expressions of his heart that she never fully understood. And yet, he did not resent her for that. He accepted it as part of the beauty of loving someone so completely. Sometimes the deepest love is the love that goes unseen. He also realized that loving someone without expectation requires immense empathy. To love this way, one must genuinely wish for the other person's happiness, even if it doesn't involve you. One must rejoice in their triumphs, console in their sorrows, and respect their freedom. The selflessness required is both humbling and transformative. It teaches the heart to grow beyond itself, to embrace a larger vision of what it means to care. Pain often came from imagining what might have been. He pictured moments where she could have known, moments where he could have spoken, moments where recognition could have bridged the silent gap between them. But these imaginings, rather than embittering him, only deepened his understanding of love. Love is not about being seen. It is about being steadfast. It is about remaining true to the heart, even when the heart's devotion is unreturned. He found beauty in the paradox. The deeper the unrequited love, the more profound the personal growth it inspired. It taught patience, humility, endurance, and compassion. It taught him to care without attachment, to give without bargaining, and to love without expectation. And while it hurt to remain invisible in the eyes of the beloved, it also brought a quiet satisfaction. He had loved fully, honestly, and without compromise. This kind of love is rare because it asks the heart to surrender completely while carrying the knowledge that there may be no reward. It asks the heart to remain tender even after repeated disappointment. It asks the heart to remain open even when closure or acknowledgement never comes. And yet, in that surrender, there is a quiet triumph, the triumph of having loved truly and without pretense. He carried his love like a sacred flame, not to illuminate himself, but to silently light the path for her happiness. Every gesture, every thought, every silent prayer was a tribute to the one he cherished. And though it remained largely unrecognized, he knew in the depths of his soul that its authenticity was unquestionable. It is a painful beauty because it teaches the heart both joy and sorrow at the same time. The joy of loving freely, of caring deeply, of witnessing someone else's happiness without conditions. The sorrow of being unseen, of giving without receiving, of hoping without certainty. It is a love that transforms quietly, leaving the heart stronger, gentler, and more attuned to the true essence of connection. The pain and the beauty coexist, the longing and the devotion coexist, the hope and the acceptance coexist. And in this coexistence, there is a profound understanding. Love that asks nothing in return is not a lesser love. It is the greatest love one can offer. He understood that some loves are meant to remain quiet. Some hearts are meant to carry devotion silently, without fanfare, without recognition, without reward. The courage lies not in demanding acknowledgement, but in embracing the depth of feeling even when it is unseen. And through it all, he continued to love her, not for validation, not for reciprocation, not for the comfort of knowing his devotion mattered. He loved her because it was the truth of his heart, because it was the nature of his being. Because sometimes the purest and most powerful love is the love that exists simply because it exists, even when it hurt, even when it was unrecognized, even when it felt invisible in the world. He remained steadfast. He loved without expectation, because that is what it means to love fully. That is what it means to love beautifully. That is what it means to love someone truly, completely, and without reservation. Sometimes the most profound impact we have on someone's life is invisible. Not everything we do is noticed or acknowledged, and yet our presence can quietly shape another person's path in ways they never understand. That was the essence of his love for her. Every gentle word, every patient action, every quiet moment of care left a mark, even if she never realized it. He never forced himself into her life, never demanded attention or recognition, but in every subtle way, he left traces of love that lingered long after he had simply been himself. A warm gesture here, a listening ear there, a comforting presence when the world felt harsh. These small acts became unseen pillars in her life. They offered her safety she didn't know she had, courage she didn't know she possessed, and hope she didn't know existed. There were times when life's challenges would weigh heavily on her. When she felt lonely, uncertain, or unworthy, he was there, not in a dramatic or conspicuous way, but in the quiet, steadfast way that only a deeply loving heart knows. He carried her burdens without ever announcing it. He lifted her spirits without needing to be noticed. And because of him, she grew stronger, even if she never recognized the source of her resilience. He never claimed credit. He never expected thanks, because real love is not transactional. It does not seek applause or acknowledgement. Its purpose is to give, to nurture, and to exist quietly, like a steady current beneath the surface of life. His love was like that, a current she floated on without ever seeing its origin. Sometimes she would look back on moments of comfort, moments of guidance, moments when life seemed a little easier, and she never realized who had made it that way. Yet he knew because he had been there, silently, with a heart wide open, hoping she could be happy, even if he was invisible in the story she told herself. There is a certain beauty in this kind of love. It transforms not only the person who gives it, but also the one who receives it, whether they know it or not. It teaches the heart of the receiver, slowly, patiently, and unknowingly. It inspires courage, compassion, and trust. And it teaches the giver something even more profound, that the act of loving itself has value, even if it is unseen. He understood that his love did not need recognition to matter. The small, silent ways he shaped her life were their own reward. He learned that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is to love them fully without expectation, to care for them deeply without needing acknowledgement, and to stand by them even if they never truly see the devotion in your eyes. His love was patient, persistent, and unwavering. It shaped her world without demanding a place in it. And that is the essence of the most enduring, most real kind of love, the kind that leaves a mark quietly, softly, and powerfully, long after it has been given, without ever asking to be noticed. Even if she never realized it, she carried a part of him with her always. The courage he inspired, the warmth he offered, the hope he held for her happiness. His love became an invisible companion in her journey through life, and while she may have thought she moved through the world alone, he had been there all along, leaving traces of devotion only a heart like his could leave. Because sometimes the most real love is not the love that is declared. It is the love that quietly shapes, protects, and uplifts, remaining invisible but profoundly present in every step the other person takes.